Hello and welcome back to the Scale Modelling Cafe and welcome to this week's update. Right, channel update. I'm reaching for the green book, but I don't think I'm going to need it. We'll have to see. So, last Sunday, the construction part of the Armour Hobby, the Armour Hobby Hurricane went up. This Sunday, yeah, quite cool. I've edited the remainder of the project and it's uploaded, ready to go on YouTube. What I decided to do is split the final episode into two because I wanted to have a little bit of a deeper dive onto how to paint and spray some RAF markings, and the weathering actually is quite involved in this model, so I wanted to break that out and do a separate video on that, which is exactly what I've done. So this Sunday is the painting of the base coat and all the markings, and then Sunday week will be the culmination of the project and all the weathering. And at the end of that, there's a bit of a montage with some pretty cool music on. Yeah, I hope you enjoy that. And then the week after that, we're going to start on this thing. More of that in a moment. I've got in the can some videos that I did when I was home in October when Julie was being issued her new knee, and I just need to edit those up. Hopefully that won't take too much, and I'll try and get some of those done in the week so I can bring them to you and drip feed those over the next few weeks. So look out for those. Right, I just mentioned the F-14 and here it is. So the only thing I've done on the airframe really is actually ripped a few bits off. So I had glued these parts of the engine nacelles onto the model. Wrong way around, 50-50, always get it wrong. So those plastic parts were put on here. I then tried to put the resin burner cans in and they wouldn't fit. And when I looked at the instructions, yeah, you had to put them in from the other side. So what I did is I ripped them off, I put them in, and then they're going to fit in there really quite nicely, and then the nozzles will just fit in over the top. If I think about it, I think I'm talking utter nonsense. I think it did say to actually put them in this way, i.e., you know, from the rear and in, but because they're glued in there, they're a lot more rigid, and it needs a little bit of flex to get them in. So what I did, that's why I ripped them off, and actually that's a happy accident because I think it's going to be easier to paint when they're separate. And then what I'll do is I will glue them on when they're painted, and yeah, there we go. It's going to take a little bit of pressure just to hold them in there because it doesn't want to spring back out. But yeah, that should be fine. Oh, there we go. It's holding in there fine. Oh no, it's just popped off. Typical. So yeah, so I did those. So that's the burner cans done. All the ordnance is done. So what I have are two painted and not quite weathered. Oh, excuse me, voice went then. Not quite weathered. I've done the panel line wash and they've had a varnish coat. I do need to weather them up. So that's the drop tanks. What I have here is I've drilled and pinned the lantern pod onto the pylons. What I haven't done is glued the pylons together. So they all just completely disassemble. And that comes off there into the sort of component parts. So I've done that. I'll just put that back. And this part, if I just hold it, maybe against my t-shirt, maybe you can't see, but there is a piece of wire in there, and then that goes in. I'm guaranteed I'm not going to be able to get this back in now. Absolutely typical. Right, yeah, I'll do that later. So that's done. The laser guided bombs, they're all done, painted, weathered, varnished. The pylon on the other side, so this one I've just pushed the sidewinder into place. The other side's going to have the Phoenix missile, and that just, oh for goodness sake, you idiot. I'm so clumsy. Ooh, nearly lost it again there. Right, so yeah, that just dry fits on there. So I've done the Phoenix missile and its pylons, all that kind of done. There's the other sidewinder, the other bombs, pylons and blah. So all the ordnance is done. Put them back in. What I've been working on today is the undercarriage, and I have used the Detail and Wonder 3D printed undercarriage set. Now, I waxed lyrical about this last week, and now it's had a bit of a wash and some detail painting. It's just utterly, utterly phenomenal. The nose wheel, part of the nose wheel is, the sort of lower part of the nose wheel is here. The wheels are done. And it's the nose wheel, the bottom part of the nose wheel is tucked up and hinged in the fuselage. It's all packed away, so I can easily paint the aeroplane with no masking or anything like that, because I've actually already painted around the wheel well. And all that does is that just hinges out, and the other nose wheel just pops in. It's just utterly amazing. The detail is just beautiful. Every single pipe, coupling, fitting is in there. You even get a couple of the tiny little hoses, the brake hoses, that are on the wheel hub. You have to be very careful taking those off. But yeah, it all lines up and they actually plug in. I mean, it's minute. And it's utterly, utterly beautiful. So those Detail and Wonder undercarriage sets are just utterly astonishing. Okay, so that is the project update. I'm about to go away for 3 days with work, and then I've got 4 days off, and this thing's going to get painted then. Painted and decorated and in with the weathering. And I'm going to use Florey's wash on this one, because I think it works really quite well on US Navy sort of grey subjects. So I'm going to do that. Okay, powering on, because the battery light is flashing at me, so let's get these done. On with the questions. One from Kitbuster says GX100 is brilliant. So this is the video about the gloss varnishing. What do you thin your VMS satin with? I bought a bottle about 6 months ago, still not used it yet. Any advice appreciated. Keep up the good work. Say thanks, mate. Right, VMS satin varnish and the matte varnish, well, probably the gloss as well, do not thin it. It's quite thick and gloopy, so you need to up the air pressure. And I've got I think it's a 0.25 nozzle, something like that, on my Iwata. And yeah, it can struggle a bit. So up the air pressure, spray it on. Relatively thick coat. You want a wet coat, not so it's running and you're flooding the place. Obviously, you don't do that. But it will level and let the varnish do the work. And there's no white blooming at all. So don't thin it. Right, so that's that one. Oh, there you go. Right, yeah, I've saved that in my phone twice. And the other one is a massive shout out to Ralph Ford, who's donated very generously a super thanks. So Ralph, thank you so much. It really, really is appreciated. I think you know by now, everybody, that I don't beg for likes and subscribes and notifications and all that YouTube crap, because everybody knows how this thing works. So I don't feel the need to do that. Right, moving on then to the news. Right, we're rattling through. How long is that now? 9 minutes. And we're nearly at the end. So the news, only one bit of news. And yeah, it's really quite significant, I think. And that is Dragon have released news of a 109E in 1/48 scale. Now, there's an awful lot already, very predictably, a whole load of moaning about, oh no, not another 109 and blah, 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 blah. which is entirely, as I said, predictable. But the engineering looks quite innovative. So the fuselage, the rear fuselage, including the cockpit sides, is a one-piece slide mould. And the advantage of that is obviously no seam at the top. Now, some people have said, well, it's a bit ironic, isn't it? Because the 109 had a seam down there, which is absolutely true. But with a 109, you have to glue it together. You then have to deal with the seam, level it all up, and then you have to scribe in the seam and try and get it to match the panel lines. It's actually quite tricky. I have tried chamfering the edges, so when you just sort of dry fit, you have the natural panel line still in there. I've had success with that. I've also had failure with that, where the plastic has kind of oozed out a bit and it looks a bit rubbish. So I prefer on a 109 to glue it together with super glue, black super glue, my go-to, sand it all flush and then scribe in those lines. But that's really tricky because the fuselage down the back end near the tail is really narrow. And yeah, you're kind of one slip away from a bit of a nightmare. So actually, I think that's great. The other thing is the join for the wings is not at the leading edge on the top and bottom of the wings like a traditional sandwich. The leading edge wraps around and it lines up with the sort of panel line just in front of the gear leg. So they're saying it's much better than the seam. Now personally I think a leading edge seam is actually quite simple to deal with. A seam on a panel line I think can be more difficult to deal with if the fit isn't Tamiya-like. So that remains to be seen what that is going to be like. Some people saying that the recess for the slats is too deep. Again, I think that's fairly easily solved with just a little bit of plastic card. But bearing in mind, these are only early CAD shots, so who knows what the final thing is going to be like. I built the 32nd Dragon 109E and it is beautiful. The only thing was the lack of rivets. That's me, that's my personal choice. I prefer rivets. Looks like from the CAD, from what we can see, there's no rivets on this one. The Wingsy kits 109 in E in 48th is apparently the best. I've not seen one, although some of the reviews I've seen online and online look lovely. Sorry, on YouTube and online look lovely. So I think it's going to have to go some way to better this, but it's got a full engine with it as well. Personally, I don't like that. I'd rather not have the engine in there and it be 10 quid cheaper and do it all buttoned up, but a lot of people will enjoy the exposed engine, I'm sure. So quite an interesting release from Dragon. No idea how much it's going to be, when it's coming out, etc, etc. But yeah, an interesting choice of kit. It's pretty crowded market, the 109, isn't it, in 48th? But the Edward one is quite getting a little bit long in the tooth now. The moulds are wearing quite badly, I think. But the Wingsy kits are lovely, albeit they're quite pricey. But I don't mind paying for quality, frankly. So it'd be interesting comparison between the Dragon and the Wingsy kits. Okay, there we are. For me, that's quite a short one, only about 15 minutes. So watch out for the Armour Hurricane videos coming out soon. The chat one on my favourite kits coming out soon, and I'll trickle feed them over the next few weeks. And hopefully, by the time you see this little thing next week, it'll be almost finished. There we are, inshallah, as they say out here. Thanks very much for watching, and yeah, I guess I'll see you around. Cheers, bye-bye.